I'm Danielle M. Bryant and welcome back to my GNM Digestible Morsels series. So I'm going to delve right into the 5 biological laws, and in this video I'm going to focus on the first biological law. It is important to cover these laws in a degree of depth before moving on to other aspects of GNM, as these underpin everything, so they are essential to know as a good foundation. These laws will likely cause a shift in your awareness, and they may also be fairly challenging for some people due to their scientific nature. But don't worry if you do not grasp the information at the start, because the more you learn, the more it will all begin coming together as more of an awareness and an understanding rather than remembering facts. So if you get stuck at the start, don't force things, just be patient. I felt it was important to address the approach to the research, the reason why it is so suppressed, and the history and challenges that Dr. Harmer faced before coming to the science, as this encourages openness to the information. It's kind of answering common questions before they are asked. Otherwise, we can get stuck with thinking of these common questions, and that can create resistance in accepting the information. So you can find information on all of this in the first 2 videos. So let's get stuck into the first biological law of nature, and this is known as the iron rule of cancer. So this law has 3 criteria. The first states that disease is a significant biological special program which originates from a serious, highly acute, dramatic and isolating conflict shock that occurs simultaneously on the psyche, the brain and the corresponding organ. And I will look into this statement in more detail. So a significant biological program is basically a survival mechanism initiated by the brain to cause cellular changes which have a special purpose in helping us to cope with the trauma. Many of these may not have a modern day use, but are left over from the evolution of life on the planet and our development as an embryo. I will come back to the biological purpose of the cellular changes in a moment. Dr. Harmer called the conflict shock a DHS, which stands for Dirk-Harmer syndrome, and he named it after his son Dirk because it was his death that triggered off this research. The DHS, as I briefly described already, is an instant moment of trauma caused when something happens that catches the person or animal off guard. It is something very unexpected for which we are completely unprepared. It is not a long period of stress, no matter how traumatic that stress or that period of life could be. And this is a common misconception of what a conflict shock is. The key word here is shock. It is that instant moment. So someone who is regularly bullied, for example, may not have a conflict shock because it's an ongoing stressful situation that they may have a degree of expectation of. So there's nothing unexpected about it. But somebody who is attacked out of the blue, physically attacked, would more likely then have a DHS because they wouldn't be prepared for it. The DHS can be figurative or literal in humans, as we are more complex emotionally than animals. So, as an example, we could suffer the same DHS from a physical attack of being stabbed or a verbal attack of sharp stabbing words. And it is also highly subjective, and as it is controlled in our subconscious, it reflects our inner beliefs and perceptions. So learning the type of DHSs we've experienced throughout our lives can actually help us to truly understand ourselves on a really deep level. So to explain this, think back to something that affected us all to an extent, something like 9/11. People's reactions ranged anywhere from thinking, this is really awful, but it is in a different country and I can't do anything about it. And then they carried on as normal, really, to others being inconsolable, distraught, consumed in fear, anger, or even frustration. There were as many different reactions to 9/11 as there are people, and this shows it is our perception of life, the world, and everything that happens that causes our reaction, and this is why DHSs are very subjective. So let's look at how something such as a divorce can affect people differently and relate this to conflicts in GNM terms. So somebody could feel like they've been abandoned and have an abandonment conflict. This would affect the kidney collecting tubules. Somebody could feel like their home is split or broken and therefore experience a nest separation, which affects the breast ducts. If this divorce is perceived with fear over who will provide for me or who will cook for me, then this could cause a starvation conflict affecting the liver. There may be a loss conflict if the person feels they're losing their partner, and this would affect the ovaries or testes. There could be an indigestible morsel conflict, which is, I cannot digest this news, and this would affect the digestive tract. There could even be a self-devaluation conflict where somebody blames themselves, thinking there's something wrong with them or they're not good enough. And this would affect the bones, joints, muscles, or lymphs. So while this biological program is active, if we were to scan the brain and the organ, we would find what is called the Harmer focus, which is a series of concentric circles, a bit like a target ring, that points exactly to the area of impact of the DHS. And here is an image of the Harmer focus at brain level, and this is the second criterion of the first biological law. Dr. Harmer also found an exact correlation between the psyche, the brain, and the organ. This could be observed on the brain and organ level simultaneously, and he found that healing also had to be completed at psyche level for a full recovery. And this is the third criterion of the first biological law. Dr. Harmer found in his case studies that specific conflicts always impacted the brain at the same area, and that people who experienced the same symptoms or condition had similar conflicts, so similar that they could be categorized as specific. Some I've already mentioned in the divorce scenario. So correlating this information, he found that the brain had control centers or brain relays for every part of the body. I am going to look at this more in separate videos so I can go into more detail and explain more about the relevance of the colours and the specific conflicts. But for now, here is a brief image of these control centres in each brain layer. So let's look at an example. We can look at what's known as an indigestible morsel conflict, which affects the gastrointestinal or GI tract. So in an animal, this could be because it ate something that it couldn't digest. But humans may experience this conflict if there is news or a situation that they cannot digest, for example. So we need to be thinking of a morsel as being a thing in non-technical terms, I guess. So the DHS will trigger cell proliferation or growth in order to increase the surface area of the organ, in order to secrete more juices or increase absorption of the morsel that it is having trouble digesting. And this depends on where in the GI tract it has been affected. So as you can see, this process is actually meaningful. And here is an image I created which roughly shows some common complaints and their associated conflict shocks. And just to let you know that these arrows are not accurate at all, they're not meant to be, they're just for illustration purposes only. So this all means that when we are ill, our bodies are not malfunctioning, but there is a meaningful process happening. And we will look more into this in the next video when I present the second biological law. I really hope that this has helped you to understand the first biological law, and I really look forward to sharing more GNM with you next time. Thank you for watching.